In 1927, a British expedition was searching for commercial routes in the Himalayas. They were not looking for knowledge. They were not seeking wisdom. They were looking for money, new paths to transport spices, new routes to move fabrics, faster ways to turn distance into profit. A storm forced them to take shelter inside a cave. They expected to stay for one night. They remained trapped for 5 days, sealed in by snow. On the third day, one of the guides found something. A wall that was not natural, stones stacked deliberately, placed by human hands, as if someone had sealed an inner chamber long ago, very long ago. The men were bored. They were curious. They decided to break through. What they found inside left them in silence. A skeleton sitting in the lotus position, perfectly preserved by the cold. And in front of it, wrapped in a cloth that had once been read, a manuscript. The local guide fell to his knees, and he whispered a name, Vardán. The manuscript was taken to Delhi, then to London. It was partially translated, then forgotten. Too strange for science, too precise to be fiction. For decades, no one spoke of it. Until now, what this manuscript contains are the final words of a man who lived 180 years. A yogi who discovered that the human body is born with 12 dormant powers, powers that all of us possess, but that almost no one awakens. In the chapters that follow, Vardán speaks directly. He tells how he fell ill as a child and was given up for dead, how he healed in 40 days, how he spent 60 years discovering each power, just how he activated them one by one, how he was persecuted for teaching them, and how, before dying, he left exact instructions for whoever might be ready. 12 powers, 12 chapters, 12 keys that have always been inside you. The Manuscript of Vardán is about to be opened. Chapter 1. The day I was born again. My name is Vardán. If these words have reached you, it is because time has completed its cycle. I write this on my final day. The body that has served me for 180 years is finally asking for rest. I do not fear what comes next. I have seen too much to fear something as simple as an ending. But before I depart, I must leave what I know. Not for everyone, for the one who is ready, for the one who can listen without judging, for the one who understands that what I am about to reveal is neither magic nor superstition. It is the oldest knowledge about the human body, knowledge that was hidden because those who possess it cannot be controlled. I will begin at the beginning, with the day I died for the first time. I was 7 years old. The fever arrived without warning. In 3 days, my body was burning from the inside. The village doctors did what they could. Herbs, prayers, cold water. Nothing worked. On the 5th day, I stopped responding. My eyes were open, but they no longer saw this world. My mother believed I was dead, but she did not bury me. Something inside her refused to accept what seemed inevitable. She wrapped my body in cloth. She lifted me onto her back, and she began to climb the mountain. She walked for 4 days toward a temple she had only heard about in rumors, a place where men lived who knew things others did not know. When she arrived, I was no longer breathing. The monks received her in silence. They looked at my body. One of them, the oldest, placed his hand on my chest. He closed his eyes, and he said something my mother did not understand. He is not gone yet. They carried me inside. For 40 days, I knew nothing of the outside world. What I know now, I reconstructed later. From what the monks told me years afterward, when I had already become one of them, they gave me no medicines. They gave me no herbs, no potions, no remedies of any kind. What they did was different. They placed me in a dark room, silent, without any stimulation at all, and they allowed my body to do what the body knows how to do when no one interrupts it: regenerate. The old monk explained it to me years later. when I was able to understand. The human body knows how to heal itself. It is born with that knowledge written into every cell, but life does not allow it. Noise does not allow it. Constant food does not allow it. Worry does not allow it. The body is so busy responding to the outside world that it never has time to repair what is broken inside. What the monks did was simple. They removed everything that distracted my body. No light to process. No sound to interpret. No food to digest. Nothing to do, except one thing: heal. On the 40th day I opened my eyes. I was not only alive, I was different. Something had changed inside me during those days of darkness and silence. Something had awakened that did not exist before. The monks saw it immediately. They said my gaze was different, that there was something in my eyes that had not been there before the fever. That was the first power I discovered, the power of regeneration. Your body can renew itself completely. Every cell knows how to replace itself with a new cell. Every tissue knows how to repair itself. Every organ knows how to return to its original state. This knowledge is written into you from before you were born. But there is a condition. The body only regenerates when you stop interrupting it. Every time you eat, your body stops regeneration in order to digest. Every time you worry, your body stops regeneration to prepare for a danger that almost never arrives. Every time you fail to sleep deeply, your body postpones the repairs it had scheduled for that night. Regeneration happens in emptiness. The monks knew this. That is why they placed me in total darkness. That is why they left me without food. That is why they removed every stimulus. They created the perfect void, a space where my body could finally do what it had always known how to do. I have seen this power awaken in others during my years of teaching. I have seen patients abandoned by doctors recover completely after weeks of silence and fasting. I have seen wounds close in days when the body was given the space it needed to close them. I have seen the elderly rejuvenate when they learn to give their bodies periods of sacred emptiness. The secret is not doing more. The secret is doing less. It is trusting that your body knows. It is stepping out of the way and allowing the intelligence that formed you in your mother's womb to continue its work without interruption. That is the first power. The power with which everything began for me. The power that returned me to life when I was 7 years old. The power I have used hundreds of times since then to repair what seemed irreparable. Your body already has it. You only need to remember how to stop interrupting it. Chapter 2. The day I learned to control inner heat. The first time I saw a man melt snow with his body, I thought I was dreaming. I was 12 years old. I had spent 5 years in the temple. Winter had arrived with a fury that even the oldest monks said they had never seen before. Snow covered everything. The wind cut into the skin. The cold entered the bones. Several young monks had fallen ill. One had died. One morning the old monk woke me before dawn. "Follow me." We walked in silence toward the outside of the temple. The snow reached my knees. Each step was an effort. Each breath burned my lungs. The cold was so intense that I thought I would die before reaching wherever we were going. Then I saw him, a monk sitting in the middle of the snow, completely still, completely naked. No cloth, no protection. Only his body against the most brutal winter the Himalayas had produced in decades. But that was not the impossible part. The impossible part was what was happening around him. The snow was melting. In a perfect circle around his body, the white snow was turning into water. Steam rose from his skin, as if a fire were burning inside his chest. There was no trick, no hidden flame, just a man sitting in peace, while the cold that was killing me could not even touch him. "I want to learn that," I said to the old monk. He did not answer. He only smiled. That same night, my training in the second power began. The power of inner heat. For the next 10 years, this power would become my obsession and my torment. The first years were pure suffering. Every night I slept without blankets. The others at least had a thin cloth. Every morning I sat in the snow-covered courtyard while the old monk watched me tremble. He taught me a breathing pattern, a precise rhythm. Inhale in a certain way, hold in a certain way, exhale in a certain way. I breathed and trembled. I breathed and trembled. For months, nothing happened. My body was just as cold as always. I began to doubt. Maybe that monk in the snow was special. Maybe he had been born with something I did not have. Maybe I was wasting my time. The old monk never doubted. "Keep breathing," he said. One winter night, after 3 years of practice, something changed. I was sitting in the courtyard as always, trembling as always, breathing the pattern that had become as natural as my own heartbeat. And then I felt it, something in my lower abdomen, below the navel, a small warmth, as if someone had lit a candle inside my body. It did not come from outside. There was no fire nearby. The heat was born inside me. I kept breathing. The candle became a torch. The torch became a fire. The heat rose through my chest. It moved down my legs. It reached my hands, my feet, my face. The trembling stopped. For the first time in 3 years, I was sitting in the brutal cold of the Himalayas without feeling cold at all. The old monk was watching from the temple doorway. "Now you understand." I did. The human body is a machine of heat. Every cell produces energy. Every internal process generates warmth. But normally, this heat escapes. It is lost to the air. The body produces it, and the world steals it constantly. The breathing pattern I was taught did something simple, but revolutionary. It told the body to stop losing heat, to retain it, to accumulate it, to concentrate it. And when heat accumulates instead of escaping, the body becomes its own source of fire. I spent the next 7 years mastering this power until I could do what that monk did. Sit in the snow and melt it. Submerge myself in frozen lakes and emerge with steam rising from my skin. Survive nights that killed animals and unprepared men. But this power is not only about surviving the cold. Inner heat is life itself. It is the difference between a young body and an old one. The elderly die of cold even in warm rooms because their inner fire has gone out. They no longer generate enough heat on their own. They depend on the outside. A body that depends on the outside for what it should produce inside is a body that is dying. You were born with this fire, but you were given blankets, heating, comfort. You were made dependent on external warmth, and your inner fire, unused, slowly faded year after year. It can be reignited. Breathing is the key. The pattern I was taught exists. It works. It tells the body that it is time to generate heat from within instead of stealing it from outside. That is the second power. Chapter 3. The day I stopped needing. I was 19 years old when the old monk gave me an order that I thought would kill me. 40 days. Only water. Nothing else. I looked at him, waiting for more. An explanation. A reason. A word of encouragement. But he had already closed his eyes. The conversation was over. The order had been given. That night I did not sleep. My mind calculated obsessively. 40 days. 1,000 hours without food. How many days could a man survive without eating? I had heard stories of monks who did it, but I always thought they were exaggerations. Legends stretched by time. No one could truly live that long without food. The first day was easy. I had skipped meals before, a little emptiness in the stomach. Nothing I could not tolerate. The second day, the emptiness became pain. The third day, the pain became a scream. My stomach howled. My mind could not think about anything except food. I dreamed of rice, of bread, of anything I could chew and swallow. The entire world had been reduced to a single thought: eat. On the fourth day, something impossible happened. The hunger disappeared. Not gradually, not slowly. It vanished as if someone had extinguished a flame in an instant. The stomach that had screamed for 3 days went completely silent. The obsession with food evaporated. In its place, something unexpected appeared. Peace. A deep peace I had never known before. As if my body had been fighting something my entire life, and had finally stopped fighting. I went to find the old monk. "The hunger is gone," I said. He nodded, as if he had expected exactly that. "Your body has found another source. It no longer needs you to feed it. Now it feeds itself." I did not understand what he meant. Not yet. In the days that followed, I began to understand. What was happening inside me was something the body knows how to do, but almost never gets the chance to do. When food stops arriving, the body does not die. It searches, it explores, it finds what it already has. And it does not only consume stored fat, it finds old cells, damaged tissues, parts that no longer serve a purpose, and it consumes them. The body eats itself, but not in a destructive way. In an intelligent way, it knows exactly what to eliminate first. What is useless? What is sick? What is in the way? It is a deep cleaning that can only occur when we stop adding new things. On the 14th day, I noticed something I did not expect. My mind became clearer than it had ever been in my life. Thoughts that had once been confused were now sharp. Questions I had carried for years suddenly had obvious answers. It was as if a fog I did not know existed had lifted from my brain. The old monk explained it to me. Your body spends more energy digesting than you imagine. When you stop giving it food to process, all that energy becomes available. The body uses it to repair, to clean, to think with a clarity that was never possible before. On the 21st day, old injuries began to heal. A scar on my knee from childhood started to fade. A pain in my shoulder that I had accepted as part of my life disappeared completely. My body, freed from the endless task of digestion, finally had time for maintenance. Maintenance it had postponed for years. That was when I understood what the monk wanted me to discover. This was not a punishment. It was not a test of endurance. It was a revelation. The revelation that everything I believed about my body was wrong. I did not need to eat every day to survive. That was a lie that keeps people working endlessly to buy the next meal, an invisible chain that controls entire populations. A man who knows he can live for weeks without food cannot be enslaved by hunger. I reached the 40th day. I had lost weight, but not strength. I had lost what was unnecessary, but not what was essential. My body had done exactly what the monk promised. It had cleaned itself, repaired itself, renewed itself from the inside in a way it never had before. When I ate my first bite after those 40 days, I cried, not from satisfied hunger, from liberation. I understood that the fear of not eating was the heaviest chain I had been carrying without knowing it, and that chain had just broken forever. In the years that followed, I used this power many times. 7 days to clean what had accumulated, 14 days to heal what doctors could not heal, 21 days to see clearly what had once been confused, 40 days for transformations that changed everything. I have seen this power do what seemed impossible. I have seen bodies consume what was killing them when given the space to do so. I have seen minds clear. After years of confusion, I have seen the elderly recover decades when their bodies could finally repair instead of digest. That is the third power, the power of no longer needing what you always believed you needed, the power of giving your body the emptiness where it can do its real work. Your body already knows how to do this. It is only waiting for you to give it the opportunity. Chapter 4. The voice that knows before you do. There was a monk in the temple who never made mistakes. I am not exaggerating. Never. In the 15 years I had lived within those walls, I had never once seen him make a wrong decision. He knew when a storm would arrive before the sky darkened. He knew who was sick before symptoms appeared. He knew which visitors came with good intentions and which carried danger. The other monks respected him with a silent fear. I watched him from a distance, fascinated, trying to discover his secret. How could he know what no one else knew? What did he see that we did not see? What did he hear that we did not hear? One day I dared to ask him. I was 24 years old. I had spent 17 years in the temple. I had already awakened 3 powers. I believed I had earned the right to know. He looked at me for a long time without speaking. His eyes seemed to pass through me, as if he were seeing something behind me that I could not see. Finally, he spoke. I know nothing that you do not already know. The difference is that I listen. I did not understand. Listening was easy. I listened all the time. I listened to the other monks. I listened to the wind. I listened to my own thoughts, which never stopped talking. What was he listening to that I was not? Come with me. He led me to a cave high in the mountains. I had never been there. Very few knew it existed. The path was so narrow that one wrong step meant falling hundreds of meters to death. Inside the cave, there was absolute silence. Not the silence of the temple, where there was still wind, birds, and breathing. This silence was complete, as if sound itself was afraid to enter. You will stay here until you hear. And then he left. He left me alone in the deepest darkness I had ever known. No light, no sound, nothing except my own mind. The first hours were torture. My thoughts screamed in the silence. Every worry, every fear, every memory I had ignored for years suddenly demanded attention. The noise inside my head was unbearable. I could not believe how much noise I had been carrying without knowing it. Days passed. I do not know how many. Without light or sound, time ceased to exist. There was only me in my mind, me and the thoughts that refused to be quiet, me and the internal noise that was worse than any external noise. Then slowly something changed. The noise began to weaken. The thoughts grew tired of shouting without response. The worries exhausted themselves by repeating endlessly. The internal noise that had accompanied me for 24 years finally began to fade. And then I heard it, not a voice with words, not a sound. It was a knowing, a direct certainty, a complete understanding that appeared fully formed in my mind. I knew the monk would come for me at the next dawn. I did not think it. I did not expect it. I knew it. I knew my mother in the village was ill, but that she would recover. I had no way of knowing this, but I knew it. I knew one of the younger monks would leave the temple before the next winter. No one had said anything, but I knew it. When the monk arrived at dawn, exactly as I knew he would, he found me crying. You found it. I had found the voice that had always been there, the voice that everyone has, but almost no one hears. Not because it is silent, because we are too noisy. He explained what I had discovered. There is a part of you that knows everything you need to know. It is connected to something greater than your individual mind. Some call it intuition. Others call it the sixth sense. The ancients knew it as the connection to the intelligence that moves the entire universe. But there is a problem. That voice does not shout. It whispers. And the noise of your thoughts is so loud that the whisper is lost. You think and think and think, and while you are thinking, you cannot hear what you already know. That is why he sent me to the cave, not to torture me, to silence me, to exhaust my thoughts until there was finally enough inner silence to hear what had always been trying to speak. From that day on, the voice never left me. I learned to quiet my thoughts without needing a cave. I learned to create inner silence in the middle of external noise. I learned to consult that voice before every important decision. And that voice never led me astray. This power is inside you right now. As you listen to these words, there is a part of you that knows things your mind does not know. It knows which decisions to make. It knows whom to trust. It knows which path to take, but it is whispering, and your thoughts are shouting. The fourth power is simple to understand and difficult to practice. You must become quiet. You must stop thinking long enough to listen. You must trust that there is something wiser than your mind operating inside you. That is the fourth power, the power that allowed me to know what no one told me, the power that guided me whenever the mind did not know what to do. The voice is already speaking to you. You only need to stop making so much noise to hear it. Chapter 5. The Invisible River. The day I saw energy for the first time, I thought I had lost my mind. I was 28 years old. I had spent more than 2 decades in the temple. I had awakened 4 powers. I believed I already understood how the human body worked. I believed I had already seen everything there was to see. I was wrong. That morning I had been sent to meditate beside the river that descended from the mountains. It was a common practice. The sound of water helped calm the mind. I sat on a rock. I closed my eyes. I began to breathe as I had been taught. Hours passed. The sun crossed the sky. My body remained motionless, while my mind slowly emptied. It was a state I knew well, an inner silence I had cultivated for years. And then something different happened. I opened my eyes, and the world was no longer the same. The river was still there. The rocks were still there. The trees were still there, but now I could see something else, something that had always been present, something my eyes had never perceived before. Light, not sunlight, another kind of light, a light that emanated from everything that was alive. The trees glowed with a soft radiance. The water of the river shimmered with something that was not reflection, and when I looked at my own hands, I saw that I was glowing as well. I ran back to the temple. I was convinced something was wrong with my mind. The old monk listened to me without interrupting. When I finished describing what I had seen, he smiled with a calm that irritated me. "You are not insane. You are finally seeing what has always been there." He explained what I had discovered. Everything that lives has energy. The ancients gave it many names. The Chinese called it qi. The Indians called it prana. The Japanese called it ki. Different names for the same thing. A vital force that flows through everything that exists. Through plants, through animals, through human beings, through the entire universe. This energy is not a metaphor. It is real as the blood that flows through your veins, as real as the air that fills your lungs. The difference is that blood and air can be seen with ordinary eyes. Energy requires different eyes. Eyes that only open when the mind becomes quiet enough. That was what had happened to me by the river. Years of practice had silenced my mind to a point where I could finally perceive what had always been there. The light I saw was not an illusion. It was the vital energy flowing through all things. In the years that followed, I devoted myself to studying this invisible river. I learned that in the human body, energy flows through specific channels. The same channels Chinese physicians mapped thousands of years ago. They called them meridians, invisible pathways through which vital force travels from head to feet, from the center to the extremities. When energy flows freely, there is health. When energy becomes blocked, there is illness. It is that simple and that profound. Every pain, every discomfort, every disease can be traced back to a blockage in the flow of energy. A place where the river stagnated, a point where what should move stopped moving. I also learned that energy can be increased. The human body produces energy constantly, but most people spend it as fast as they create it. They spend it on unnecessary thoughts, on emotions they do not control, on tensions they carry without realizing it. By the end of the day, they are empty, exhausted, with nothing left to give. But there is another way to live. It is possible to produce more energy than you spend. It is possible to accumulate it, to store it, until the body overflows with vital force, until there is so much energy that it spills into others, until the mere presence of a person makes others feel more alive. The masters I knew had this. When they entered a room, something changed. The air felt different. People felt more awake, more present, more alive. It was not magic. It was energy. So much accumulated energy that it overflowed into everything around them. Breathing is the key to accumulating energy. Every inhalation brings energy from the outside. Every exhalation can either release it or retain it. Most people breathe in a way that releases more than it retains. But there are ways of breathing that do the opposite. Ways that accumulate, ways that store, ways that build reserves of vital force that do not run out. Movement is also a key. Not just any movement, specific movements that open the channels, that unblock what is stagnant, that allow energy to flow through paths that had been forgotten. The ancients created entire systems of these movements. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. They were not exercise. They were energetic technology. That is the fifth power. The power to see the invisible river that flows through everything. The power to unblock it when it stagnates. The power to accumulate it until it overflows. The power to live with a vitality most people believe is impossible. This power is your birthright. Energy is flowing through you right now. With every breath, with every heartbeat. The question is not whether you have it. The question is how much you are wasting without knowing it, and how much you could accumulate if you learned how. The invisible river is already flowing inside you. You only need to learn how to see it, and how to stop emptying it. Chapter 6. What came out of my hands? The first time I healed someone with my hands, I did not know what I was doing. I was 32 years old. A pilgrim arrived at the temple carrying his son in his arms. The child was 7 years old, the same age I had been when my mother brought me to these mountains. He was burning with fever. He had not woken up for days. The doctors in his village had given up. The father begged. He had heard stories about monks who healed. He had walked for weeks to reach the temple. He had bet his son's life on a rumor that might not be true. The old monk was not there. He had left days earlier for a distant temple. He would not return for weeks. The other monks knew how to pray, but they did not know how to heal. They looked at me, waiting, expecting something I was not sure I could give. I approached the child without knowing what I would do. His small body trembled with fever. His skin was so hot it hurt to touch. His breathing was shallow, irregular, as if every breath were a battle he was losing. Something told me to place my hands on him. It was not a thought. It came from deeper. The same direct knowing I had discovered in the cave years earlier. The voice that knows before you do. That voice told me that my hands were the only thing the child needed. I placed my right hand on his chest, my left hand on his forehead. I did nothing else. I did not pray. I did not recite mantras. I did not try to do anything. I simply left my hands there, still, and allowed something inside me to open toward something inside him. Then I felt it, heat leaving my palms. Not the heat of the skin, another heat. The same heat I had learned to generate to survive the mountain cold. But this time it did not stay in my body. It flowed outward, from my hands into the child. Like water finding its way downward. The father watched in silence. The other monks watched in silence. I watched my own hands without understanding what was happening. The heat continued to flow. For what felt like hours, my hands moved on their own, guided by something that was not my mind. They moved to the child's sup's chest, to his abdomen, to his head, to specific places I had not chosen. But that clearly needed what my hands could give. When I finally removed my hands, the child opened his eyes. The fever had dropped. His breathing was deep, regular. Color had returned to his face. He looked at me with confusion, then with calm. He did not know what had happened, but he knew he was well. The father fell to his knees, crying. The monks stepped back. They looked at me as if I were a stranger. I looked at my hands, trying to understand what had come out of them. When the old monk returned weeks later, I told him everything. Hands are channels. That was the first thing he said. Then he explained what I had discovered by accident. The energy that flows through the body has points where it can exit. The hands are the most powerful of these points. That is why mothers place their hands on their children when they are sick. That is why lovers touch each other when they want a comfort. That is why the dying ask someone to hold their hand. Deep down, everyone knows that hands can give something words cannot. What I had done with the child was not a miracle. It was the conscious use of something everyone does unconsciously. When you touch someone, energy always flows in both directions. You can give energy, or you can drain it. You can heal, or you can harm. It depends on what is inside you and on how you direct it. In the years that followed, I studied this power with absolute dedication. I learned that there are specific points on the body where energy enters more easily, the same points Chinese acupuncturists had mapped with needles. I learned to activate them with my hands. I learned to feel where the blockage was before anyone told me. I learned to guide energy exactly where it was needed. I have healed hundreds of people since that day. Fevers that would not break, pains doctors could not explain, illnesses with no name, but with the same cause every time. Blocked energy, stagnant energy, energy that no longer flowed where it should. Hands unblock, hands open closed channels. Hands push energy where it has stopped reaching. This is not magic. It is physics, the physics of something that cannot be seen, but is as real as anything that can. Your hands have this power right now. Every time you touch someone, energy moves. Every time you place your hands on a sick child, on a friend who is suffering, on your own body when something hurts, there is an exchange. Most people do it unconsciously, without intention, without knowing whether they are healing or harming with each touch. The sixth power is making conscious what has always been unconscious. It is learning to feel the energy leaving your palms. It is learning to direct it. It is learning to give what others need without emptying yourself in the process. That is the power of the hands. The power I discovered the day a dying child showed me what lived inside me. Your hands already know how to heal. They only need your permission. Chapter 7. The sound that moves matter. The first time I heard a master sing, the water in a metal bowl began to move on its own. There was no wind. There was no vibration from the ground. There was nothing that could explain what my eyes were seeing. An old man sat in front of a bowl filled with water. He emitted a sound that seemed to come from a place deeper than his throat. The water responded. It formed patterns. Perfect geometries appeared and disappeared according to the tone he produced. Circles within circles. Waves organizing themselves as if an intelligence were guiding them. The sound was moving matter. I was 36 years old. I had seen many things in the temple that villagers would call impossible. But this was different. This was visible, measurable, undeniable. The master stopped singing. The water became still. He looked at me as if he knew I had been watching from the shadows. Come. I sat in front of him, the bowl of water between us. Everything is vibration. That was the first thing he said. Then he continued. The rock that seems solid is vibrating. The air that seems empty is vibrating. Your body, which seems still, is vibrating. Right now, everything that exists is movement, frequency. Sound too high or too low for your ears to hear, but sound nonetheless. I looked at the bowl. If everything is vibration, then vibration can affect everything. The right sound can move water. The right sound can move sand. The right sound can move the cells of your body. It can organize them. It can heal them. It can destroy them. The master sang again. This time I paid attention. The sound did not come from his throat. It came from lower, from his chest, from his abdomen, from a deep place I did not know existed. When the sound emerged, his entire body vibrated with it. The water once again formed patterns. "What I do with water," he said while singing, "I can do with a sick body." In the months that followed, I studied with him. I learned that the human voice is the most powerful instrument that exists, more powerful than any instrument built by human hands, because the voice does not only produce sound, it produces intention, and sound with intention is sound that moves reality. The master taught me specific sounds the ancients had discovered thousands of years ago. They called them mantras, but that word has been emptied of meaning. People repeat mantras as if they were magical formulas, without understanding, without feeling, without producing the sound from the right place. A mantra spoken from the throat is just noise. A mantra spoken from the abdomen, with intention, with understanding of what each syllable does inside the body, is medicine. It is surgery without a blade. It is healing at the cellular level. I learned that each organ has a frequency. The heart vibrates at a certain frequency when it is healthy, the liver at another, the kidneys at another. When an organ becomes ill, its frequency changes. It falls out of tune, like an instrument that is no longer properly tuned. And just as an instrument can be retuned with the correct sound, an organ can be retuned with the correct voice. The first time I healed with my voice, the patient could not believe what he felt. He was a man with chest pain. No doctor had been able to relieve. I sat in front of him, and I began to produce a specific tone, a tone the master had taught me for the heart. I held it for several minutes. The man looked at me with skepticism. The skepticism turned into astonishment. "Something is moving inside me," he said. I felt the vibration of my voice entering his body. I felt how the sound reached exactly where it needed to go. I felt something that had been stuck begin to loosen. When I finished, the pain was gone. It never returned. 30 years later, I learned that man lived to old age without that pain ever coming back. A few minutes of sound had done what years of treatment could not. But the voice does not only heal, it can also destroy. The same principles work in both directions. A frequency can organize cells, or it can disorganize them. It can strengthen an organ, or it can weaken it. That is why the ancients were so careful with the words they spoke. They knew that every sound leaving the mouth has an effect. The words you speak about yourself affect your body. When you say, "I am sick," your body listens. When you say, "I cannot," your body listens. When you say, "I am old," your body listens and obeys. Every word is an instruction. Every sound is an order. Your body is constantly being programmed by what you say. Those who live long lives speak in a certain way. I have observed this for decades. The elders who reach extraordinary ages do not speak of illness. They do not speak of limitation. They do not speak of death as something inevitable. Their words are different, and their bodies respond to those words. That is the seventh power. The power of understanding that your voice is an instrument of creation, that every sound you produce has an effect, that you can heal with the right words, and that you can make yourself ill with the wrong ones. Sound moves matter, and you produce sound every time you open your mouth. The question is not whether your voice has power. The question is whether you are using it to move toward health or toward illness, toward life or toward decay, toward what you want or toward what you fear. Chapter 8. The eyes that see what does not exist. The master who taught me how to see was blind. He had lost his eyes in an accident when he was young. 2 empty sockets where vision had once been. And yet he walked through the temple without a staff. He avoided obstacles no one warned him about. He knew who entered a room before anyone spoke. I was 40 years old when I met him. I had spent more than 3 decades in the mountains. I had awakened 7 powers. I believed I already knew what it meant to see. The blind man showed me that I knew nothing. One day he challenged me to a game. He would stand at one end of the courtyard. I would throw stones at him. If he could avoid them, I would become his student. It sounded absurd. A man without eyes dodging stones thrown without warning. Impossible. I accepted, convinced I would win easily. I picked up 5 stones from the ground. I stood 20 steps away, and I threw the first one without a sound. The stone passed exactly where his head had been a moment earlier. He had moved at the precise instant, without seeing, without hearing the stone coming. He simply knew. I threw the second stone, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth. He avoided all of them. I stood there, my hand empty, staring at a man without eyes who saw better than I did. "There is more than one way to see," he said, walking toward me with a smile. "The eyes on your face see very little. They only see what is present, what already exists, what is already manifested. But there are other eyes, eyes that see what does not yet exist, what can be, what will be. Those eyes are not on your face. They are here." He touched the center of my forehead. The third eye. I had heard the term before. The monks spoke of it as something mystical, something distant, something reserved for enlightened beings. I never imagined a blind man would teach me how to open it. The training began that very night. He blindfolded me. For the next 6 months, I lived in complete darkness. I ate without seeing. I walked without seeing. I meditated without seeing. At first I collided with everything. I fell constantly. The frustration was immense. The blind man had no patience for my frustration. "You stop using the eyes of the face, and you think you are blind," he said. "You are not blind. You are beginning to see." Weeks passed. Something began to change. I started to feel the walls before touching them. I began to know where obstacles were without hitting them. I began to perceive presences, shapes, silhouettes, things I did not see with my eyes, but somehow still saw. By the 3rd month, I could walk through the temple without colliding with anything. By the 4th month, I could avoid objects other monks threw at me to test me. By the 5th month, something stranger began to happen. I began to see images. Not with my covered eyes. Somewhere inside my head, images of things that were not present. A monk walking toward the temple, while he was still an hour away. A storm forming while the sky was still clear. Events that had not yet happened, but that I could see as if they already had. The blind man removed the blindfold the day I described the storm before it arrived. Now you see, but not with the eyes of the face. I was seeing with something else, something that had been dormant for 40 years. Something that awakened when physical sight was removed from the equation. He explained what I had discovered. Physical vision is a limitation. It shows you only what already exists, only what is in front of you, only the immediate present. But there is another vision, a vision not limited by time or space, a vision that can see what is distant, what is hidden, what was, what will be. The ancients called it clairvoyance. The word has been corrupted. Now it is used by charlatans who pretend to see the future for money. But the real ability exists. It is not seeing the future as a fixed film. It is seeing possibilities, probabilities, the paths that are forming before they solidify. I have used this vision for decades. I have seen illnesses before they manifested in the body. I have seen dangers before they arrived. I have seen opportunities before they were obvious to everyone else. This is not magic. It is expanded perception. It is using parts of the brain most people never activate. Children have this vision naturally. They see companions adults cannot see. They know things no one told them. They feel what is about to happen before it happens. But adults tell them they are imagining things, that it is not real, that they must trust only their physical eyes. and slowly the inner vision shuts down. It can be reopened. The eighth power is remembering how to see without the eyes, how to perceive what is not present, how to know what has not yet occurred. It is not predicting the future. It is seeing the threads that are weaving it before the fabric is complete. Your inner eyes already exist. They are closed, dormant, forgotten, but they are there. Every time you had a feeling that turned out to be right, those eyes opened for a moment. Every time you knew something without knowing how you knew it, those eyes showed you something. The power of vision is not seeing more. It is seeing differently. It is seeing what the eyes of the face will never be able to show. That is the eighth power. The inner eyes are already there. They are only waiting for you to stop depending on the outer ones. Chapter 9. What happens when you close your eyes? The oldest monk in the temple slept only 2 hours each night. 2 hours. He was 120 years old. His body was strong, his posture upright, his mind clear. While the rest of us slept 8 or 9 hours, he slept 2 and woke up more rested than any of us. He rose before dawn. He walked without heaviness. He breathed deeply. His clarity surpassed that of men half his age. I was 45 years old when I finally dared to ask him how this was possible. I had watched him for years. I knew it was not coincidence. It was not luck. It was not a gift. Something in the way he slept was different. How is this possible? I asked. You sleep less than everyone else, yet you are stronger. He looked at me with the patience only the very old possess. It is not how long you sleep, he said. It is how you sleep. Most people spend hours in bed, but they never truly sleep. I sleep little, but I sleep completely. I did not understand. Sleep was sleep. You closed your eyes. You lost consciousness. You rested. That night he decided to show me. He led me to his small room. A simple space. A bed. Nothing more. Lie down, he said. Sleep the way you normally sleep. He sat in the corner and watched. I closed my eyes. Knowing I was being observed made it difficult to relax. Minutes passed. Then hours. My body was still, but my mind kept moving. Thoughts appeared. Images. Memories. Small worries with no importance. Eventually, sleep came. When I woke, the sun was already high. The old monk had not moved. Your body lay there all night, he said, but you only truly slept for a short time. He explained what he had seen. For most of the night, I was in shallow sleep. I shifted positions. I dreamed. My breathing was irregular. My mind remained active. My eyes were closed, but I was not absent. Only in brief moments did I enter what he called true sleep. Deep sleep, the sleep in which the body does its real work. Shallow sleep is partial rest. The body rests a little, but not enough. The muscles loosen partially. The mind slows but does not stop. Repair begins, but it does not finish. It is like washing clothes without soap. Something is cleaned, but never deeply. Deep sleep is different. In those hours, the body works without interruption. It repairs damaged tissue. It removes toxins from the brain. It releases substances that rebuild muscle. It balances hormones. It consolidates memory. It processes the emotions of the day. It renews every cell. That is where true regeneration occurs. The old monk had learned to enter this state almost immediately. He did not spend hours turning in bed. He did not remain trapped in shallow sleep. When he closed his eyes, he fell directly into deep sleep. 2 hours of that sleep were worth more than 10 hours of ordinary sleep. He decided to teach me. The training lasted months. The first lesson was preparing the body. A tense body cannot fall into deep sleep. If you bring the tensions of the day to bed, he said, your body remains alert. An alert body does not regenerate. Before sleeping, every muscle had to be consciously released. The shoulders, the neck, the abdomen, The legs, tensions we carry without noticing. The second lesson was preparing the mind. An agitated mind keeps the body awake, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about yesterday, replaying conversations, rewriting the day. Before sleeping, the mind had to be emptied, not by force, by letting go, returning to the breath, to the weight of the body on the bed, to the present moment. The third lesson was intention. This was the most important part. Before closing his eyes, the old monk gave instructions to his body, not vague wishes, clear instructions. Repair this, clean that, work on this while I sleep. The body listened, the body obeyed. During the night, the body did what the conscious mind had requested. It took me years to master this practice, but when I did, everything changed. I could sleep 4 hours and wake completely renewed. I could fall asleep with pain and wake without it. I could go to sleep with a problem and wake with the solution clear. Sleep is not wasted time. Sleep is the most productive part of the day if you know how to use it. It is when the body does the work it cannot do while you are awake. I observed this for decades. Those who age quickly sleep poorly. They spend hours in bed, but they never go deep enough. Their bodies never finish repairing. Damage accumulates, day after day, year after year. Those who age slowly sleep deeply, not necessarily longer, but better. The ninth power is not sleeping more. It is sleeping better. It is learning how to enter regenerative sleep quickly. It is turning unconscious hours into a laboratory where the body repairs, cleans, and renews itself. Every night, your body tries to regenerate you. Every night, it attempts to do its work. The question is not whether it can. The question is whether you allow it. Chapter 10. The strength you never knew you had. I once saw a mother lift a rock that 5 men could not move. I am not speaking in metaphors. I am not exaggerating. I saw it with my own eyes. Her child had been trapped underneath. A small landslide on a mountain path, stones falling without warning, a moment of silence, then screaming. The rock was enormous, larger than the child, larger than the woman herself, heavier than anything a human being of her size should ever be able to lift. The men of the village ran to help. They tried to push the stone. They tried to roll it. Nothing moved. They went to look for levers, ropes, tools. The mother did not wait. I heard her scream from the temple. It was not a scream of fear. It was not a scream of pain. It was a raw sound, a sound that did not come from the throat, a sound that came from something deeper. Then I saw the impossible. The woman placed her bare hands on the rock. She inhaled deeply. Her entire body tensed, and she lifted it. She did not push it. She did not roll it. She lifted it. She held it long enough for someone to pull the child out from underneath. Then her strength vanished. She dropped the stone, and she collapsed beside it, unconscious. I was 50 years old when I witnessed this. I had spent more than 4 decades studying the human body. I believed I understood its limits. That mother showed me there are no limits. I went down to the village when I learned she had awakened. I needed to understand what had happened. I found her lying down, exhausted. Her arms hurt so badly she could barely move them. When I asked her how she had done it, she looked at me in confusion. "I don't said no," she said. "I only knew I had to save my son, and I did." She did not remember thinking. She did not remember deciding. She did not remember making any conscious effort. Something else had taken control of her body. Something had access to strength she did not know she possessed. Western doctors have a name for this. They call it hysterical strength. They document cases of mothers lifting cars to save children, of people performing impossible physical feats during moments of extreme crisis. They acknowledge it, they record it, but they do not explain it. The old monk did explain it. The human body is far stronger than the mind allows it to be. Your muscles can generate enough force to tear themselves apart, to break bones, to destroy joints. That is why the mind imposes limits. It is a protection mechanism. You never use your full strength, only a fraction. But in moments of survival, the mechanism shuts down. When there is no time to think, when the most primitive instinct takes over, the limits disappear. The body accesses reserves that are normally locked away, a strength that was always there, but that the mind kept hidden. I spent years studying how to access this strength without waiting for a crisis. I observed martial arts masters, small men who could throw much larger men, elderly men who could break stones with bare hands, monks who could withstand blows that would kill an ordinary person. They had all learned the same thing. They had learned to consciously deactivate mental limits, to access stored strength, without needing a child trapped under a rock, to use the whole body instead of the small fraction most people use. Breathing was the first key. True strength does not come from the muscles. It comes from the center, from the abdomen, from the place where energy accumulates. Before every act of strength, the masters breathed in a specific way. They filled the center, they concentrated the energy, then they released it in a single explosive moment. The mind was the second key. Limits are mental before they are physical. The body can always do more than the mind believes. Every time you think, "I can stud," your body obeys. Every time you believe you have reached your limit, your body stops, even if more strength remains. Fear was the enemy. Fear activates limits. Fear says you might get hurt. Fear says this is too much. Fear keeps strength locked away. The masters did not eliminate fear. They moved through it. They acted despite it, until it stopped controlling them. I have seen monks in their 70s do things young athletes could not do, not because their bodies were special, because they had learned to use what everyone has. They had spent decades removing the mental limits most people accept as reality. They had discovered that the body keeps enormous reserves of strength for emergencies, and they had learned how to declare an emergency at will. The 10th power is not building more muscle. It is accessing the muscle you already have. It is removing the limits your mind imposes. It is discovering that the strength that Mother used exists in you right now, stored, waiting, ready. Your body is far stronger than you have ever experienced. The limits you feel are not physical. They are mental. They are protections designed to keep you from harming yourself. But those protections also keep you weak. They keep you using only a fraction of what you truly have. That is the 10th power. The power to access the strength that was always there. The power to do what your mind says is impossible. The strength is already inside you. It is only your mind that has convinced you otherwise. Chapter 11. What your body has never forgotten. There was a woman in the village who cried every time she saw fire. Not a cry of fear, not a scream, not a sudden reaction. It was a deep crying, a crying that came from somewhere inside her, a crying that overwhelmed her completely. Since childhood, every time a flame appeared, even a small one, even at a distance, tears flowed uncontrollably. Her body tensed, her breathing tightened, her chest collapsed inward. She cried without knowing why. Doctors never found an explanation. She had never been burned. She had never been in a fire. Her family had no history of accidents involving flames. Nothing in her conscious life explained her reaction, and yet her body reacted the same way every time. She was 55 years old when they brought her to the temple. Her husband was desperate. The woman could not cook. She could not light candles. She could not sit near a fire without collapsing into hours of crying. Her life was restricted by something no one could explain. I spent 3 days observing her before speaking. I watched how her body reacted, how her breathing changed, how her shoulders tightened, how her stomach pulled inward. On the 3rd day, I asked her to sit. I asked her to close her eyes. I asked her to breathe deeply, not to calm down, not to relax, to listen. I told her to allow her body to show her what her mind had forgotten. What happened next changed my understanding forever. Her body began to tremble, not lightly, deep, violent tremors. Her breathing accelerated. Her hands clenched. Then she began to speak, not in her language, not in any language I recognized. She shouted words that were ancient, harsh, foreign, a language no one in the village had ever heard. Her face transformed. Terror crossed her features, not abstract fear, lived fear, as if she were reliving something that was happening now. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Her body relaxed. Her breathing slowed. She opened her eyes. She looked at me, confused. "What happened?" she asked. She remembered nothing. Her conscious mind held no memory of what had emerged, but her body remembered. I told her what I had witnessed, the words she spoke, the unknown language, the terror. She did not recognize any of it. But after that session, something changed. The next time she saw fire, she did not cry. Her body did not react. What had been trapped inside her had finally been released. Years earlier, the old monk had spoken to me about this. He told me the body stores memories the conscious mind cannot access, memories from this life, experiences too painful to process at the time they occurred, and memories of something older, something the modern mind rejects. But the ancients understood. I do not know if what the woman relived was a past life. I do not know if it was ancestral memory encoded in her blood. I do not know if it was something science does not yet have language for. What I know is what I saw. A woman speaking a language she never learned. A body reliving terror it never experienced in this lifetime. A memory stored somewhere waiting to be released. I have seen this hundreds of times since. Chronic pain disappearing when someone finally cries what they never allowed themselves to cry. Illnesses improving when emotions held for decades finally find release. Fears with no apparent cause dissolving when hidden memory comes into awareness. The body forgets nothing. Every experience leaves a mark. Every unexpressed emotion is stored somewhere. In a muscle, in an organ, in tissue, in cells. The mind can forget. It can repress. It can deny, but the body cannot. That is why some people always feel pain in the same place. Tests show nothing. Scans show nothing. Everything appears normal, but the pain remains. Because the pain is not physical. It is memory, something the body is holding, something that occurred long ago. The shoulders carry responsibility. I have seen people with shoulder pain heal when they finally released burdens that were never theirs to carry, responsibilities they accepted without being asked, weights carried out of habit. The stomach holds fear. Digestive problems often come from anxieties swallowed instead of expressed, worry stored where food should be processed peacefully. The chest holds grief. A heart that aches without medical cause often holds uncried sorrow, unfinished mourning, lost love, pain that should have left through tears. The 11th power is releasing what the body stores. It is not easy. It requires courage. The courage to feel what was avoided. The courage to allow the body to release what it has been holding. Sometimes for decades. Sometimes for what feels like more than one lifetime. When release happens, everything changes. Chronic pain disappears. Mysterious illnesses heal. Patterns that repeated without explanation finally break. Energy once used to hold old memory becomes available for living. Your body is holding something right now. Something your mind prefers not to remember. Something that was too much to process when it happened. Something stored in your tissues, waiting. The 11th power is listening to what your body remembers. It is releasing what has been trapped. It is healing not only the body, but the story the body has been carrying. Your body has forgotten nothing. The only question is whether you are ready to remember. Chapter 12. The power that governs all the others. This is the final power. The one that took my entire life to understand. For decades, I believed the 11 previous powers were separate, that each one had its own technique, its own secret, its own key. I spent years mastering each power as if they were independent skills that had to be learned one by one. I was wrong. The truth came to me on a winter night. 70 years after my mother carried me up the mountain to save my life. I was already an old man. I had taught hundreds of disciples. I had healed thousands of people. I had seen things most would never believe. And that night, a child humbled me. He was 8 years old. His family brought him to the temple because he frightened them. Objects moved around him without being touched. He knew things no one had told him. He healed injured animals simply by looking at them. His parents believed he was possessed. I observed him for a full week. The child did nothing special. He did not meditate. He did not breathe in any particular way. He did not practice techniques. He knew no rituals, no disciplines. He simply did what he wanted to do, without hesitation, without doubt, without questioning whether it was possible. One day I asked him how he moved the objects. He looked at me as if the question made no sense. "I just want them to move," he said. And they move. That night I did not sleep. 70 years of practice, thousands of hours of meditation, techniques learned from the most advanced masters, and an 8-year-old child could do more than I could, simply by wanting. That was when I finally understood what had been in front of me all along. The real power is not the technique. The real power is will. The 11 powers I had learned were not 11 different abilities. They were 11 expressions of the same thing. Focused will without interference. Pure intention without doubt. Wanting without the hesitation the mind always adds. The child did not know it was impossible to move objects with the mind. No one had told him it could not be done. No one had installed limits inside him. His will flowed freely because nothing blocked it. There was only what he wanted and the act of making it happen. Adults lose this. We learn that certain things are impossible. We learn that the body has fixed limits. We learn that we cannot heal ourselves, that we cannot see beyond what is obvious, that we cannot do what masters do, and each belief becomes a wall between our will and our ability. The techniques I taught for decades do not create power. They remove the walls that block the power that already exists. Breathing does not create energy. It removes blockages so energy can flow. Meditation does not create intuition. It quiets the noise so intuition can be heard. Fasting does not create regeneration. It removes obstacles so regeneration can occur. The power was always there. The will was always there. What was missing was the removal of what stood in the way. I have met masters who could do extraordinary things without any technique. They did not meditate. They did not fast. They did not practice special breathing. They simply wanted something, and they did it. Their will was so pure, so free of doubt, so untouched by beliefs about what was impossible, that it worked without assistance. I have also met practitioners who mastered every technique. They knew every breath, every posture, every sound, and they could do nothing. They knew the methods, but deep inside they did not believe. Their will was divided. One part wanted, another part doubted, and doubt always won. The 12th power is unified will. It is not brute force. It is not desperate desire. It is not repeating affirmations until you convince yourself. It is simpler and harder. It is wanting something completely, without the part that doubts, without the part that asks if it is possible, without the part that prepares for failure. The 11 powers before this one are preparation. Each removes a layer of doubt. Each proves that something you believed impossible is possible. Each weakens the walls between your will and your ability. When all the walls fall, what remains is pure will. And pure will can do anything. This is my final message before I leave. You do not need techniques. You do not need practices. You do not need masters. Everything you need is to want without division, to want without doubt, to want like that 8-year-old child who moved objects because no one told him he could not. The 12 powers were always one, and that one power was always inside you, waiting for the moment you stopped believing you did not have it. That moment can be now, if you want it, if you truly want it, without conditions, without doubt, without anything dividing your will in two. The power of the 12 is the power of one, and that one is you.